Get you on Oprah.
I'm really proud to be with the Libertarian Party. I've been an independent candidate, voter for a long time, constitutionalist, political activist, paralegal, political junkie, and the most accurate voters in this country, this state, are the Libertarians. They understand the law, they understand the liberty. And I don't think anybody in here is a fan of Obama, including me. Let me tell you this little story about Obama. He was out in a state recently, I think it was Virginia, I forget where it was, and he was raising money. And some old cowboy like me from Texas was bugging him with questions. I'm not from Texas, I'm from Wyoming. And so Obama was irritated. And it was a hot day, and there was some flies buzzing around. And the cowboy says to Mr. Obama, "Y'all having a problem with those flies, sir?" Obama looks back and says, "Yeah." He says, "Those are circle flies." "What do you mean circle flies?" He says, "Well, down in Texas, them flies always around the corral, and they're always flying around. They're typically around the horse's tail." And Obama says, "Oh, that's interesting." And then he says, "Wait a minute. Are you calling me a horse's ass?" And the cowboy says, "No, sir. I have too much respect for our country and your office to call you a horse's ass. However, it's pretty hard to fool those circle flies." Anyway, as I was telling my friend Steve over there, I really don't want to run for office. But like my hero, President Jefferson, said, "Those who seek liberty and freedom must undergo the pain to support it." So that's what I'm willing to do one more time. I ran for mayor in Cheyenne 2 years ago, scared the living hell out of the establishment, and they beat up on me, and I lost. But looking at the current state of affairs, everyone has a package in here. I'm going to kind of digress and read from it. It has a dear delegate. I'd like to run for Secretary of State. If you grant me the honor of the nomination, I think I can. My bio is in there, which explains the history of my commercial life. I've been self-employed most of my life. Went to Colorado State University, did not graduate. Dropped out, became a rodeo cowboy, rode bulls and broncs for a few years. Went in partnership on a cattle ranch in Montana. Went broke. My dad said, "Go back to us, do construction." So I went and joined him in California. We had a home construction business for 4 or 5 years, very successful. And got married and took my wife back to the Rocky Mountains. So I've been in Gillette, Casper, and Cheyenne since 1986. My home is Cheyenne. I spent about 12 years in the real estate business as an investor, also an appraiser, and 2 years as a loan officer. I know that business real well. My political experience is none. I told you I ran for mayor once. My background is advertising, sales, marketing, investing, international travel, and law. My hobby is law. I've studied law for 30 years. And that Constitution that Mr. Come on, what's your name? I forget.
Rossman?
Rossman, yeah. Wrote is my favorite clause in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 7 declares our state a republic. The Secretary of State has very limited authority and very big responsibility and very limited powers. How many people, I wonder, know what his powers are? He takes care of the state seal. And he takes care of all the papers the governor signs into law. That's his main job. That's pretty hard. My 14-year-old granddaughter can do that. No, it's much more serious than that. He's in charge of all corporations. He's an absolute czar and dictator of most corporations. I'm a registered agent, just like a lawyer. I can incorporate anybody legally and charge fees for them, which I do. Not very much per year, but I make a little bit of money. The Secretary of State receives the application for corporation, limited partnership, LLC, whatever, non-profit, for-profit, sub-S corporation. You pay the money, you fill the application, you're good to go. But how many of those companies are scams? How many are a local car agency that's been there for many years selling bad cars to people, and the people in that county are ticked off? Any kind of a corporation in this state, the Secretary of State has the absolute power to go, bam, you're dissolved because you've used the powers the state has given you, or you've broken the law and you were convicted of selling stolen merchandise, but you're doing a good job with your car dealer. Bam, he's gone. That's a really nice power by the Secretary of State. He is also in charge of all voting. He oversees all voting in the state. And if I was Secretary of State, I would make sure that we're not on electronic voting. But if we were, I would not allow that anymore. We'd go back to paper ballots, and that's the way it should be. What would be my, now back up a minute. On those 5 boards, the Secretary of State sits next to the governor on all 5 boards, and those 5 executives, governor, Secretary of State, superintendent of schools, treasurer, auditor, control those 5 boards. And those 5 executives, by controlling those boards, control the economy and the money in the state. 5 people. The first board is Business Council. It's in charge of community development. Okay. The next board is the State Building Commission, which has a huge budget. And it's a big, big window. I'm not going to digress into that today, but I'll give you an example. In the newspapers of the state, the wise legislature has already appropriated, squared away $240 million to build up the state capitol and more office space that they need. What about all the decrepit and lousy buildings downtown Cheyenne that are vacant, eyesore? They could take some of that money and acquire those buildings and revamp the whole downtown section for a lot less than $240 million. That would be my recommendation to the board there. Public lands board, what do? They lease the lands to ranchers, farmers, and mining companies. I've always been curious. There's a rumor going around that the federal government owns 80% of the land in Wyoming. Have you heard that? Is that true? I don't think it's true. I'm going to find out whether I'm elected or not, because the only way that land goes to the federal government after the federal territory of Wyoming joins the union and is approved to join the union, all sovereignty, all obligations, all jurisdiction of the federal government disappears and it lands on the governor and the legislature. Well, how did the feds get all that land? Technically, there's supposed to be what's called a land patent executed at that time. Now, when I lived in, first time I investigated that was 10 years in Wyoming. All the land in the county was land patented by President Ulysses S. Grant. That's sovereign land. That's not BLM land. So I investigated to find out, did that happen or did that not happen? Because like Clive Bundy, that big rancher, he claims what I know, but he says they can't have any land inside the state. Well, that's another story. The third board is SLIB, State Lands and Investments. I have one recommendation for that board. If you investigate the state's portfolio of the Treasury, it has yields that go to the general fund in the state of Wyoming. It's about $300 million a year that there's investments pour back into the state budget. That's wonderful, except there's 2%, 1%, 3% dividends. When I was in the insurance and securities business many years ago, I sold cattle funds, sold mutual funds, I sold life insurance, I sold oil wells. I know a little bit about that. From what I've discovered the last couple of years, there's companies, and I don't think there's one in Wyoming, but there's companies in California and Kentucky and Texas that say, hey, we have oil wells for sale. You want to buy some? When you look at those numbers, it's really shocking. And one of those guys, a friend of mine named Steve Thompson, he's been in the business 35 years. He got 100 investors. He's never hit a dry hole. They're all making huge returns on their money. Why can't the state buy some of those oil wells? He owns them in Colorado, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Steve's a multi-millionaire with his partners being millionaires. The state buy some of those stripper wells that are already in production and are for sale by bankruptcy or divorce or death or taxes or something. Buy them at a big discount because that rainy day fund has about $12 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Get 2%. If they buy an oil, well, they're going to be making between 20 and 80% a year on their money. We need another revenue stream besides this federal government. Please give us some money. Lastly, the Secretary of State sits on the Board of Deposits. Again, the Wyoming portfolio they're doing a good job. But it's my opinion that the dollar is in a slow downhill crash, and we're going to all take a real hard hit before we die. Really bad. Does the state of Wyoming own any gold and silver? Nope. Does it own any foreign currencies? Nope. I would recommend, it's not my department, but I would recommend, because I sit on the board, take 10% of that portfolio, put it in silver, gold, and foreign currencies such as Swiss francs, Japanese yen, Chinese yuan, whatever. Diversify, because when the dollar crash comes, that portfolio is not going to be able to support what it used to be done. The campaign that I would run is real simple. I would only speak about money, jobs, and taxes, and I drew up a corny sign here for billboards and slapping them all on the buildings. It says, Kit Carson, Libertarian. Next line says Secretary of State. And the bottom, on the left-hand corner, it says jobs, jobs, jobs. On the right-hand corner, it's got a nice big red stop sign. It says EPA. I think everybody knows what that means. The opposition that's already flying around the newspapers, everybody has in kit what I'm talking about. We got 5 goofballs running for that office already. Mr. Rhino Buchanan from the legislature, Mr. Illaway Rhino from the legislature, Mr. Murray, he's kind of a good guy, Republican, but he's a multi-millionaire, and he's in it for the fun. And then we have this millionaire lawyer, Republican, that wants to be Secretary of State. This guy's slick. He's also been censured once by the Supreme Court for unethical practices. Then we have this Miss Goody Two-Shoes from the Constitution Party running, which is totally incompetent to do anything except to deliver Mary Kay products. And that's about it. I really believe we can win. I can win if I get the support of 3 counties. If I don't get any support, any committees that are going to be supporting the candidates, maybe it's a sheriff candidate in that county from the Libertarian Party, as well as Secretary of State. That's fine. They should support them. But I want to form 23 committees as fast as possible. And I'm going to share with you a formula that probably nobody knows about. The Democrats in New York are almost undefeatable when they get a candidate out for any office. That's not true, but it's basically true. They have a formula called CAHILA. This is in your kit. Have you ever seen that? Have you ever heard of this? This is top secret. You're not supposed to know this. Okay? Works like this. You know 5 people you trust that are going to vote. You are obligated to call them and tell them to get their 5 people. Steve, you know 5 people in your county? Jim, you know 5 people? So on and so forth. Those 5 call 5 more. This is all to be done in 72 hours. Ron Paul did some of this. I didn't get it from him though. Look what happens. We have an announcement, email. Our campaign sends out an email to the hardcore in every county. The CAHILA formula is going to be effective this next weekend. Let's go for it. These 5 people call 25 people. They call 125 people. They call 675 people, which turns into 3,375 people. And every phone call is a big, badgering demand for $10. Send $10 to the Libertarian Party. That would generate $33,000 in 1 weekend. What if we did that 4 times? This can happen. I believe it can happen. If you know 5 people, I know 5 people. And what would be very effective is if you're going to be on the committee, everyone that volunteers on the committee in any political campaign, pledges their valuable time and they don't get paid for it. Everyone that works on my campaign is going to get paid. For example, I asked somebody to, you have a Lions Club, or the Gun Club, or the Libertarians Club, yeah. Why don't you talk to them and invite them to have a political power luncheon? And I'll come and give them my 2 cents worth and ask the questions and give them answers. $25. You get 10% for wings that luncheon. So these Lions Club guys come together for $25, and the candidates, whether it's sheriff or me or whoever, comes and talks to them. There would probably be a webinar. I'm thinking that'd be pretty effective. Has anybody here attended webinars? They're really wonderful. They really are. So 100 delegates show up from the Lions Clubs, the gun clubs. It's $2,500. You get 250. The Libertarian Party gets the rest after they pay for luncheon. And that's kind of my platform and my ideas, ladies and gentlemen. I have one form I didn't give to you. You all have my business card. Anyone in any county that wants to help me in the election, I have one form here, committee to elect Secretary of State, volunteer, and be the first member or the chairman. So if you don't want to help, that's okay, it's understandable. But you probably know somebody in Teton County or Johnson County or Devil's Tower somewhere who's an activist and would like to be involved in their county. Give me a call, tell me who they are, I'll talk to them. Fill out one form, they're designated important member of the fundraiser, and they get paid for their work. That's all I have to say, unless you have some questions. Three counties, populations, etc.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I didn't give us a